What is up, everybody? Welcome into another episode of the Wide Eye Sports Podcast. We got a full cast and crew today, and if you clicked on the video, you kind of have an inkling of what this video is going to be about here today. And we're going to go over everything you need to know to start playing fantasy football. Not everybody is a vet. Not everybody is a multiple-time champion. Not everybody has been in
I
leagues
am.
before. Are you? Are you?
I'm a multiple time champion. So.
My first year I did fantasy, I won, and I credit that to you, Spoon, honestly, because in our league they said nobody is allowed to help you, and he secretly was like texting me and being like, yeah, bro.
Yeah, bro. All right.
I can admit that because nobody in that league watches this podcast. So whatever.
Yet. But anyways, we're gonna go over everything. We're gonna go over scoring types, league or roster constructions, what a commissioner's role is. We're gonna go over everything top to bottom. We're gonna get this rolling right after the credits, so hit it. All right, guys and gals, we're going to hop right into things. But before we do, I would just like to take a moment and ask everybody to like, comment, subscribe. Give us a little bit of love, and it'll go a long ways. You know, throw us on in the background while you're doing, playing Elden Ring, playing the new Madden, playing the new College Football 25, which I have been grinding on. So if you're doing it, throw us on in the background. Just give us a listen, give us a little love, subscribe is huge. But other than that, we're gonna jump.
You doing some recruiting there? Hang on, I want to know how your season's going.
After my third straight national title with Washington State, I'm feeling pretty good.
The game just came out, bro.
Yeah.
You have 3 titles.
That's 3 in my dynasty. My Road to Glory character is going into his second season. He won a Heisman his freshman year, so now we're going into our sophomore year, and we're looking Heisman hopeful again.
That sounds like mine. I'm curious. Where did I'm guessing you were a quarterback?
I went to Michigan, and then I hopped in the transfer portal over to Louisville for my sophomore season.
I won a natty with South Carolina.
Yeah, a little Gamecock action.
Yep, and then I transferred to Syracuse, and right now I'm in the middle of that season right now. Just upset number 7 Miami.
Oh, yeah. All right. Well, we are going to jump right into fantasy football. And for those of you who don't know what fantasy football is, or you have an inkling of what it is, but you're not really sure, this is for you. We are going to go over all the basics today. We're going to give you everything that you would need to know to start playing tomorrow. And that is what we are going to do, whether that's on Sleeper, Yahoo Fantasy, ESPN Fantasy, NFL Fantasy, any other major ones I'm forgetting? I don't know any other major ones. But no matter where you're
said
playing,
Sleeper, right?
Yeah. Sleeper was the first. Sleeper,
Yahoo,
Sleeper
NFL.
does not endorse us, but if you don't use Sleeper, then what are you doing? Like, you should be using Sleeper. All right. So first things first, fantasy football is just a virtual game in which real people draft NFL players to fictional teams, right? So it's not real, right? We're not doing anything real. We're not owning anybody, nothing like that. And it's usually for people. Dude, you should see some of you should see some of the comments on some of the videos I watched for like inspiration on videos. I mean, the comments are wild on YouTube. The internet is a wild place. Okay. So every year you use, different teams. Sometimes leagues carry over year to year. We're going to go over all that. So first thing we're going to start with is scoring. How the scoring works, how the points work in this league, in this fake football league, right? So there are 3 types of scoring. There's standard, half PPR, and full PPR. And we're going to go over what all that means right away, okay? So a standard scoring league in fantasy football refers to a specific set of rules used to assign points to players based on their performance in the game. What that usually looks like 9 times out of 10 is passing yards by a quarterback. You usually get 1 point for every 25 passing yards. Passing touchdowns are usually worth 4 points. So if you had 100 yards and a touchdown, you would have 5 points. Okay. Interceptions.
Wait.
Oh,
No, you'd have 8 points.
or sorry,
Yeah.
8 points. Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry. Apologies.
Let's say-
Apologies.
Bro, do you know how to
apologies.
play fantasy football?
No, I don't know how to play fantasy.
No fantasy. I know math though, and that math ain't mathing. Sir.
That math ain't mathing. So, and then sorry, lost my train of thought. Interceptions were next. Interceptions are usually worth -2 points. So, you throw 2 picks, that would drop you down back to the 4 points in which.
Let's say does that count against the intended receiver?
No, just the quarterback.
Look
Just
at
the quarterback. But what if only if it's so that goes into a whole other thing. Like tipped passes versus interceptions, which I said should be a stat for like 10 years now. But anyways, that's a whole different video. So we're gonna move on from quarterbacks to receivers, running backs, tight ends. So rushing yards are converted 1 point per 10 yards. So if you have a 5-yard rush, you get 0.5 points. If you have a 6-yard rush, you get 0.6 points. Okay. Usually both rushing and receiving touchdowns are worth a full 6 points. So if you have a 6-yard rush for a touchdown, that would be 6.6 points. 6 points for the touchdown, 0.6 points for the rushing yards.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
So let me give you 2 examples then. Let's say you have a receiver and obviously it only counts from line of scrimmage, right? So it doesn't matter if quarterback drops back 10 yards. He throws a 10-yard pass and then the receiver runs 10 yards. What's that versus a 20-yard pass and catch and immediate drop? You understand what I'm saying?
Immediate drop. What do you mean by
he throws the quarterback throws a 10-yard pass and the receiver catches it, runs 10 yards, then gets tackled, versus the quarterback just throwing a 20-yard pass and then
getting tackled right there.
Same points.
Same point. They're the exact same. Exact same. In standard scoring leagues, they are the exact same. Now in half PPR and PPR leagues, which we'll get into in a minute, they are different. So there's some different things there, but that's the yardage points for rushing and receiving. It's the same. It's the 1 point to 10 yards, 0.1 points to 1 yard, right? Or 0.01 points to 1 yard. So next up is fumbles. If your player fumbles, so you have a running back and he has, a 10-yard carry and then fumbles, that would be -2 points, but you had the 10-yard rush that still counts. So that he would be only at -1 point because he gets a point for the 10 yards, but then he gets -2 points. So he really only goes to -1 for the game. And then it keeps going from there. So usually interceptions, turnovers in general, fumbles, all of those are -2 points. Kicking, it gets a little bit different. Kicking, there is no real set standard. It varies very much league to league. So kickers, you have one kicker on your team usually, and it depends. They usually break it up in, 20 and under, then 20 to 30, 30 to 40, 50 to 60, and then 60 and up. So, and then different point values are assigned to those kicks. It's really hit and miss. You can get all sorts of some. I've seen it where if your kicker misses a kick, you lose 2 points. So it's very random. Check your league rules for that. Just keep an eye out for what that is, because it can really, if a 60-yard field goal is worth 10 points in your league, that is huge when you get guys like Justin Tucker, Brandon McManus back in the day. Guys, if somebody's kicking in Denver where the altitude is higher, the air is thinner, the ball goes farther. Okay. All things you can look out for, all things you can take notes on. And then last but not least, we have the defense and special teams. You draft an entire defense and special teams unit. So all 11 guys on the defense, the entire special teams unit, right? So that is if the kick returner or the punt team has a blocked punt for a touchdown, you get 6 points for that team. If the defense has a pick six, you get 2 points for the interception and then 6 points for the touchdown. You don't get yardage, but you get those points, or you get points for sacks, you get points for fumble recoveries, safeties. And then there are, similar to kickers, there are tier levels with the points allowed. So usually it's like 0 to 7 points allowed is 10 points. Then 7 to 14 is 8 points. 14 to 21 is 4 points. And so on and so forth until it goes negative. And then when you get 40 put up on you, it's worth negative 5 points, something like that.
Damn.
So that is the breakdown of standard fantasy football. What do you guys have anything to add to the standard conversation real quick?
I guess with standard scoring, obviously the points are assigned for the stats you produced. So when you're looking at drafting guys, you want to draft the guys that are going to put up big yardage numbers, lots of touchdowns.
Touchdowns are platinum in standard scoring. Those are going to be your biggest boom for points, are going to be touchdowns. In some of the other versions,
regardless of how many carries or touches they might be getting.
Yeah, because in standard, it doesn't matter how many times your guy touches the ball. It only matters how many yardages or how much yardage they have and how many touchdowns they put up, and then turnovers and vice versa. So those are going to be your main avenues to points for your running back, wide receiver, tight ends in standard scoring. Quarterbacks, you have the standard 25 yards to a point, 4 points to a touchdown. So that's not going to be as big of a deal. But if you have a guy like, back in the day, Russell Wilson, he didn't really have a bunch of yards, but he was a mobile guy who threw a lot of touchdowns. So he had a bunch of rushing yards, which for the quarterback is huge, right? Most quarterbacks don't have that. So you get the same rushing yardage numbers as you would for a running back or a wide receiver. Same point system, right? That's 1 point for every 10 yards. So you get that boom, and then you get the throwing for a bunch of touchdowns, rushing for a few touchdowns. That stuff is huge compared to a Kirk Cousins, who may throw for 25 to 30 touchdowns, but he doesn't have the rushing numbers, right? He has just those. Guys like last season, Justin Herbert, I think we can all agree Justin Herbert's a fringe top 5 quarterback in the NFL. He was quarterback 17 in fantasy because he doesn't have the huge statistical numbers. He's a great quarterback, but that doesn't always mean they're great in fantasy. So don't always just look for the big names. That's a common misconception in fantasy.
Yeah, because
football.
whenever a quarterback rushes for a touchdown too, it's also 6 points. It's not.
I'll tell you right now, if you're in a fantasy league and you draft Justin Herbert, you're gonna lose. I'm sorry.
That's not always true.
I know that. That's
not always true. All right.
Not always true.
Next up on the list is fantasy football PPR leagues, PPR scoring. And what that stands for is point per reception. So there are 2 types. There's a full point, and then there's half point. So half PPR and full PPR. The only difference between the two is you get half a point per reception versus you get a full point per reception. So all of these scoring rules will apply to both, except for that. That's the only difference, is half a point versus a full point for every catch. That's not carries. The running backs are getting carries, right? It's for every catch. So a forward pass that is caught doesn't count for screens that are behind the line, like going backwards, not behind the line of scrimmage, but going backwards. Those are tosses. Those don't count. Those are carries. So it has to be a forward pass that is caught. So you either get 1 point or half a point, depending on the league you are in. And then pretty much everything after that is the exact same. Your biggest differences in your PPR style leagues versus your standard style leagues are going to be your players who you draft, because a guy like Michael Thomas from 2019, right? Everybody remembers Michael Thomas's offensive player of the year season. He had like 183 catches. Insane, right? So that's a free 100. And for those of you who don't know, the average number 1 wide receiver catches anywhere from 100 to 120 catches a season. That's like the average range, and he caught 183. So that is wild that he caught, or roughly that. I don't remember what the exact number is, but it was somewhere in the high 170s, low 180s number. He had like 200 targets. So that's a 50-point boost right there if you're playing in a full PPR league over the next wide receiver, the next closest, right? If they caught 120 balls and your guy caught 180 balls, that's 60 points. So stuff like that is important, and it changes who you draft and who you draft running back too. Because like a guy like Derrick Henry, is a downhill rushing maniac who just, he's downhill 25, 30 carries a game going downhill, just getting carry after carry after carry, but he doesn't have any receptions versus a guy like Alvin Kamara. Alvin Kamara is used in the pass game a lot. So he may have 5 receptions a game and then similar yardage to Derrick Henry, but he gets that extra 5 points and those extra touches, which could lead to more touchdowns because he had more opportunities. So you always want to, when you're looking up, you're going to end up looking up draft boards of who to draft and where to draft or where you're drafting and who you should draft. Always make sure you're specifying in the search bar, is it PPR? Is it standard? You want to know because the draft position of guys changes a lot because of that. Is there anything else anybody wants to add to the scoring conversation?
No.
I guess the biggest thing I look at in the especially PPR, half PPR, when you're getting points for receptions is target share, which is basically how much of the offense's total touches go through one player. And that is going to maximize your potential scoring if they're getting all the touches on that team.
Yeah, for sure. So if you have that Michael Thomas 2018, 2019 season, whatever it was, and he's getting a target share of, 50% of the team targets versus a guy like T. Higgins who's only getting, 13% of the team targets. It's
still putting up nice stats. You want to go for the guy that's going to touch the ball more.
Yeah.
That's also why Christian McCaffrey is usually the number 1 overall pick every year.
Because he gets the majority. I mean, that dude catches the ball. That dude runs the ball. That dude goes out and plays wide receiver. He can run downhill. So he gets a huge number of chances to touch the football. The more chances a player has to touch the football, the more likely they are to score or put up points, which is what you want them to do. So anything else before we move on to the different types of leagues? So we went over the scoring types. These are the different types of leagues that we're going to move on to. Anything? All right. So what I mean when I say different types of leagues, there are 3 common league types. There's a yearly redraft, what's called a keeper league, and what is called a dynasty league. So a yearly redraft is you have, say, 8 teams, right? You and 7 friends are on a league together, and you draft your teams every year. You draft brand new teams every year. So every year you get together in August, you get together early September, and you do a draft, and you make all new teams. And you can do any of the scoring types with any of these 3 leagues. It doesn't matter. Those can be all interchanged. So I just know that can kind of get confusing sometimes. Just know all 3 scoring types are compatible with all 3 league types. So next up is the keeper league. A keeper league in fantasy football usually denotes that 1 or more players on your team is kept and rolled over to the following year. So, like if Riley had a team and happened to have Christian McCaffrey on his team, he could say, I want to use Christian McCaffrey as my keeper, and he just gets Christian McCaffrey auto put onto his team the next season, and then you redraft the rest of the team. Or he has Christian McCaffrey and Justin Herbert, and he goes, I want to keep Christian McCaffrey and Justin Herbert this season. And it depends on the league. Some of them are one player keepers. Some of them are 3 player keepers. It just depends on your league specifically. The last type of league is the dynasty league, the one I mentioned earlier. And that dynasty denotes that you're trying to build a dynasty. It's anywhere from 5 years to the rest of your life. You keep the exact same team. You draft 1 time for your main team, and then from then on out, it's rookies and free agents every, June, July. You do like a 3-round draft, and you draft the new rookies, the new free agents, those guys.
Yeah, honestly, if you're a newbie in fantasy, I wouldn't suggest starting right out with the dynasty at all.
No,
I would give it a year or 2 and then jump into it.
Setting yourself up for failure.
Yeah, Dynasty, you need to know what you're doing. This is an S tier difficulty. You need to know what you're doing out of the gate, because if you don't and you just hop into this, you're going to have a terrible time, right?
It's not going to be fun.
Yeah,
don't spend $50 to $100 starting right now, jumping straight into a dynasty, because you're going to lose your money every year for the next 5 years.
Yeah, it's not a great idea. But it is really fun. You get 7, 8, 9 buddies or friends or whoever, family members, whatever, and you guys just run it back every year. And you're trading in and out of the year, so you see players come and go, and then at the end of the season, your draft position stays the same based off your standings, which not all leagues do that. Some leagues reset and randomize the draft every year. Other leagues, it depends on who got last year, and they do it in reverse order of the previous season standing. So it's very league to league. These are very much things that your commissioner will know. So just shoot them a text, give them a phone call, ask these questions, because you want to win, and to win, you have to have all the knowledge that you need to win. And that's what we're trying to give you the head start on today, is getting that knowledge, knowing about the stuff you need to ask, knowing about the stuff you need to look for. So those are the 3 league types. There's the yearly redraft. You redraft every year. A keeper, you redraft most of your team every year except for maybe 1 to 3 players. And then the dynasty league, you keep your team in its entirety every year, and you draft rookies, and you drop a couple guys and slot the rookies into your team. So do we have any questions, comments, concerns about any of that stuff?
Nope, not necessarily.
Okay. I don't have notes on this, but Spoon, you brought up a good point earlier about spending money to get into leagues. Some leagues are monetary. So sometimes, you have a league of 5 guys. You'll never have a league that small. So let's say 10 guys. That's more considerable or realistic. So 10 people in a league, everybody has a $10 entry fee. So the grand prize is $100 to first place, or $90 to first place, and second place gets their $10 back, right? So, and that's for making the playoffs and then winning the league, right? And all of that is great, but know your skill level. If you hop into a league and your friends are like, yeah, let's do like $100 buy-in, they're really good. They know what they're doing.
They're not just going to waste $100.
Yeah, they're not just throwing $100 away. They're on their phone every Tuesday at 3:00 when the waiver hits, and they're ready to go, right? They're ready to add and drop players left and right. They're really experienced. They know exactly how to use every feature on the app.
But Brenner, what's a waiver?
Exactly. That was my next one. So
what's the waiver?
So the waiver it's called the waiver wire, and there are multiple types of waiver wires. But we're going to start with the easiest, and that's an open waiver. So that means the waiver wire is all your free agents in your league, guys who are not on any of your or your friends' teams, that are available for you to pick up and select by picking them and choosing a player to swap them with. Okay, so at any time, there's 100 people out there that you can, oh no, my running back doesn't play this week, I need another running back. You can go check the waiver wire and see a list of all the people who aren't on anybody's team yet and pick one of those guys. But be warned, if you do that and you swap them out, the player you are swapping them out with is now available for the rest of your league to now pick up and do the same thing with. So if it's your best player, I don't recommend ever putting them on the waiver wire, because then anybody can go and get them, and you don't want to lose those guys. The second kind of waiver is, I forget, it's not the in order waiver. What's the technical term for that? Do you know? It's blanking. But the second type of waiver is basically standings waiver wire, right? So the person who's in last place in the standings gets first dibs. So let's say the waiver transactions go through on Wednesday. You are in last place, or I'm in last place. Riley's in first place. We both watch Monday Night Football. We both see a running back get hurt and his backup come in and kill it. His backup's doing great. We both go in at the same time or at different times on Monday night and both put in, I want this running back and I want to get rid of this player for him. And we submit that to the waiver. On Wednesday, when the transactions are processed, the waiver wire will automatically give that player to the person that is lower in the standings because they are doing worse, so they're going to get more help. So I would receive the player in that instance. Riley would miss out on that guy and keep the player that he slated that he wanted to drop. And then the third kind of waiver is a free agent bidding waiver. So you have an allotted amount of money. So the Dynasty League I'm in, we have $100 a season. You get $100 that you get to try to buy players off the waiver, right? So let's do the exact same example as before. I'm in last place. Riley's in first place. And running back gets hurt. Backup kills it again. So Riley goes in and puts $10 down to get this backup running back. I go in and put $8 down to get this backup running back. Keeping in mind, we don't know what each other put on the waiver. You can't see those numbers. You only know what you submitted. So on Wednesday, when that transaction goes through, Riley would be awarded that player because he paid more money for them. Does that make sense, Dalt?
Yes.
Everybody
Yeah.
makes sense?
Yeah.
All right, just
Yeah.
making sure I'm not rumbling. Okay, cool. I just want to make sure I'm not rumbling and it's not making any sense. So those are the three types of waiver. There's the normal waiver where you can just pick up and drop guys at any time, any place, except for while games are being played. You're never allowed to add and drop players while games are being played in any leagues. There's the standings one where depending on the standings of the league is who gets the player. And then there's the bidding one where you bid money, virtual currency, not real. Some leagues do real money.
Auction type shit.
Yeah. Auction type shit, as Dalton said.
So the word you were trying to find is inverse standings waiver.
Thank you.
But I was
standings
gonna point out there's a few other waivers.
Yeah. Go for it.
I was gonna say rolling waivers is kind of the main one. That's the one where it's like, hey, if you're last in your standings, you do get top priority. But if you pick up a player during that week, your priority is now gone, and it goes straight up to like basically if half your league picks up players during the week before the waivers go through, that moves the other 5 players who have not picked up anybody during the week. They now get the priority the following week because they didn't add or drop anybody.
Yeah, so like if I'm in last place and Spoon's in second to last place, and the one where me and Riley goes down, the one where I'm in last place and I get the player because I'm in last place. Now the next week, if Spoon's in second to last place, he gets priority now instead of me.
Right.
Yes.
So, and then so on, and then third from the bottom, fourth from the bottom, fifth, all the way up to the top. And
well,
then,
my explanation for that was going to be, okay, my player is now out, and I find out Sunday morning.
yeah,
I don't have anybody else to play, so I got to pick up a free agent off the waiver who was not claimed. So I pick him up. Now, whenever the waiver comes out, and I'm in last place, but whenever the waiver comes out, guess what? I don't get priority because I picked up a player Sunday morning.
Yeah, and that can really suck. So
That
it's
can really
very
suck.
important to know what kind of waivers your league has, and to be on top of that because you don't turn your notifications on. Turn your notifications on.
You don't just want to be picking people up left and right. You have to have some forethought, either starters or potential starters, young guys.
You want to be, and keep in mind, there's Thursday night football games, right? So you got to know Thursday night who's playing. You got to know on Thursday night, oh, okay, I got a running back in this game. Because if Friday comes around and you forgot to start your best running back because they had a bye last week, and you forgot to start your best running back, you can't just now put them in now that they've played. Once they've played, they can't be put from your bench into your lineup.
You really gotta pay attention to that kind of stuff, man. Because my second year, when I didn't have help and people were reminding me, I lost like 3 separate weeks. I lost because I forgot to bring somebody back off of a bye week.
Yeah, it happens. So we're gonna move from the waivers and we're gonna go over to the draft. Okay, so there are 2 main draft types. There's 3 big ones, but the 2 main ones I'm going to touch on. I'll touch on the third kind of quirky one real quick. It's a bidding draft, so you bid for players similar to how you bid in the waivers. We're not going to get into that because
the term normally used is called the auction draft.
Auction draft, and It's very detailed and very deliberate. And if you're just starting out in fantasy football, you do not want to jump into a league like that. You will get decimated very quickly by people who know what they're doing. That is something you need to look into and research before you do it, or else you're just wasting your money. So the two main league types are a snake draft, draft types are a snake draft and a linear draft. A snake draft is pretty much what everybody uses. 9 leagues out of 10 are going to use a snake draft. And that is because it snakes down the draft order. So person 1 through 10 in the first round, and then in round 2 you go person 10 to 1, and then round 3 you go 1 to 10, round 4 10 to 1, and it goes down and back, down and back, down and back, all the way down through the 15, 16, 17 rounds you have in your draft. Very simple. The other one, linear. It's just 1 through 10, round 2 1 through 10, round 3 1 through 10, round 4 1 through 10.
Honestly, I don't know many people that have ever done a linear draft because it's unfair.
Yeah, linear drafts are mainly used in dynasty leagues. And even 50% of dynasty leagues use snake drafts now.
I do have a question for you guys, just because I feel like I hear a lot of people have different preferences.
Yeah.
In a snake draft, would you rather be the guy picking twice, or would you rather be the guy in the middle every round going down?
If it were, I'll let you say it, and then I'll say mine.
I mean, 100%. I like to be in the first third or last third. So I don't like being one in a 10-man draft. I don't like being 1, 5, or 10. I like being 3 or 7. I like having a little bit of buffer. So if I'm the 7th pick, then I have 6 picks till it gets back to me. Whereas if I'm the 10th pick, I have 2 picks back to back, but then I go 18 picks without a pick. And I don't love that. So
I was going to say that I don't like drafting 4 through 7, but I do enjoy drafting 1 through 3 or 8 through 10. And one of my big reasons for that is, like Brenner said, he doesn't like having the 1 or the 10 where you draft back to back. I don't mind that because there's a lot of times where it comes up and it's like, damn, like, do I take this guy or do I take this guy? You don't know. But hey, if you have the 1 or the 10, you can go ahead and just take both of them right then and there. And I do enjoy that aspect of it.
I definitely don't mind being the 1 or the 10.
That's kind of why I asked, because I love being the 10. Having the 2 back-to-backs when you're having
you just go so long without a pick.
You do. It does make for a boring draft because you sit there for so long. Like that's why like 5 or 6, like if you don't like it taking too long, then that's perfect for you because you drafted basically almost the same exact spot every single round.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do enjoy because I do teeter between 2 people constantly because it's like, hey, is this guy going to make it back to me?
Because you're indecisive?
Well, no. It's not because I'm indecisive, but like also the other thing too is like 1 through 10. If there's a player that you really like, he's probably not going to make it back to you. So you might as well go ahead and take him right there. So it does tend to have issues where you take somebody maybe a couple picks
if you're going to,
you're supposed to.
If you're going to do that, we're going to talk about roster construction here in just a moment. But if you're going to be a 1 or a 10 or an end of a draft, you need to be so balanced in what you do. You can't go wide receiver. You need to go running back, wide receiver. You need to go tight end, running back. You need to be balanced because you will end up being out on a whole position, right? Like say there's a huge run so say you're pick 10, right? You have pick 10, 11, and then 20, 21, right? Say there's a run from 13 to 18 on running backs, and the top 12 running backs are gone now, and you have 2 wide receivers. You're screwed in the running back department. You're basically handicapping your team out the gate. So if you're going to
you got to reach for a next tier running back because you have by then you probably have like 5 or 6 really good wide receivers. But hey, you don't need to take another wide receiver here.
If I can give any advice in the first round, pick a quarterback or a kicker.
No.
I was going to say, but Brenner, quarterbacks are like the most important position on the field.
Yeah,
I love Patrick Mahomes. Why can't I just draft him in the first round?
So because of the fact that quarterback touchdowns, as we touched on earlier, are worth 4 points, and for every 25 yards they get 1 point, they may have more yards total and they may touch the ball all the time, but fantasy football takes that into account. Okay, they are balanced properly, and 9 times out of 10, there may be one quarterback in the top 20 point scorers in the NFL among fantasy football players, and you can go and get any of the top 20 quarterbacks, and it's like a 50-point jump at the end of the season. And that's not that much for quarterbacks. That's, 2 or 3 points a week type situation. Well, really 3 to 4 points a week type situation. Whereas a running back in the top 5 picks and a running back in the, 6 through 10 spot, I mean, that's 100-point difference over the course of a season. So twice the value by taking a running back or wide receiver, somebody who's going to score 6-point touchdowns versus 4-point touchdowns. And
I'll give you a prime example real quick on why not to draft quarterbacks in the first round. The QB3 last year, the third top scoring quarterback was Dak Prescott, who scored 352 points. At 15, Matthew Stafford scored 100 points less. So you're telling me 100 points separated 3 through 15? Just wait for your quarterback.
Wait for your quarterback. Take a quarterback. If Patrick Mahomes is there in the 5th, go for it.
He's not going to be there in the 5th.
He's not going to be. But if somebody's dumb enough to take him by then, let him have him. Go get your quarterback. Go get your Kirk Cousins. Go get your Jalen. Jalen Hurts probably won't be there.
Jalen Hurts probably won't be there. But I mean, I've seen Dak Prescott go in the 7th, 8th round.
Your Dak Prescott's, your Kirk Cousins, your Kyler Murray's, a guy who runs around a little bit. Your, back in the day, Russell Wilson, I mentioned earlier. I mean, go get those guys in the 6th through 8th round, and you're sitting a little bit farther back, and you got to use your earlier round picks on running back, wide receiver, tight end, guys who are gonna make a difference week to week. And being more stacked at running back, wide receiver, tight end, those positions is way more important than being stacked at quarterback. 10 times out of 10.
Yes, there's gonna be a lot of quarterbacks available. Even towards into the season, when you are on a bye week, or let's say, God forbid, your quarterback gets injured, there's somebody that's going to be able to help you out.
Yeah, 100%.
Quarterbacks, it's so weird how they finish. So here's my last example, and we'll end on this. Out of a 10-man league, Dak Prescott was the 9th quarterback going off the board last year. He finished 3rd overall. You can wait and be one of the last people to take a quarterback and still get a lot of stuff out of it. You'll be just
fine. Yeah. All right, so we'll end that there, and we'll talk about 2 more things, 2 final thoughts here. We're going to talk about roster construction and what a commissioner, what they should do for you. So we're going to talk about roster construction first. Most leagues are as follows. Your starting lineup, players that accumulate points for you that count towards your score for that week, right, are 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, 1 tight end, 1 defense, and 1 kicker. And then there's a position called the flex. The flex allows you to use a running back, wide receiver, or tight end in that spot. Now, each league will vary, but usually it's between 1 and 3 flex spots in your starting roster. Some leagues have 1, some have 3, some only allow running back, wide receiver, some allow all 3. So that's something you need to look up and find out for your league. And then anywhere from 6 to 10 bench spots, guys that are on your team but aren't contributing that week, but that you have reserved that other people can't pick up, right? They're just on your bench, and you can swap them in and out of your roster at any time. And that's a typical roster construction. Some leagues are wild and crazy and have 4 running backs, 1 receiver, 2 quarterbacks, 2 defense. Like some leagues have a defensive player where you can draft a TJ Watt, and there's all sorts of crazy stuff out there. You can find anything on the internet, but this is your typical roster construction. You're 1 quarterback, 2 receivers, 2 running backs, 1 tight end, a flex or 2, a defense, and a kicker. Those are your typical roster constructions. And then the last thing we're going to touch on is the commissioner. What is I've heard that they've told me that this guy's the commissioner. You said I should talk to my commissioner. Who and what is that? The Fantasy Football League commissioner oversees the rules, the drafts, they set it up, transactions, the waiver wire, They resolve any disputes, right? So you and a guy are arguing like, hey, I started this guy, but the app didn't put him in. And I have a text right here that says I'm trying to put him in, but it won't let me. And it's before the game. And you end up losing by like 3 points. And that guy scored 5 more points than the guy you had in. It's the commissioner's job to be like, hey, listen, this guy was trying to put that player in before the game started. He has proof of that. We're going to swap that player out for him, right? So it's also their responsibility to manage the finances or the prize. Like some leagues, you win a championship belt if you win. You win a signed jersey if you win. Some leagues, you just win straight cash, like we talked about earlier. It's the commissioner's job to oversee and take care of the prize money, the prize, whatever it is you're competing for. And then it's also their job to ensure fairness. So fairness amongst all is their number one responsibility. However they see fit, that, that's their job. They need to make sure that the league is fair for everybody, first and foremost. And that pretty much encapsulates what a commissioner does, other than keeping it, keeping the integrity of the league sound, making sure people aren't cheating, making sure, if I try to trade, Riley, and Riley has Christian McCaffrey, and I trade him, T. Higgins for Christian McCaffrey, the commissioner will step in and go, listen, that's not a fair trade. That would give you a crazy big advantage. I can't let that happen, right?
So that goes into, there are 3 rules when dealing with a commissioner. Number 1, anytime they ask you for anything, the answer is no. You want to make their life as difficult as possible. Number 2, anytime they win, whether it's in a game or in a trade, it's collusion. They cheated somehow. Rule number 3, anytime you see them in person or on the phone, you boo them.
Relentlessly. You boo them until they're like, why are we even friends still? Really? And then
why did I take this job?
Why did I actually agree to do this for my 9 friends who just hate me now? So, but that's it. Does anybody have anything to add to the Wide Eye Fantasy Football Starters Guide? Anybody got anything they want to add? Cool. That is it for us today. That is the how-to start and get into fantasy football. If you tune in next week, we will be talking about our fantasy football favorites, players to draft boards, what we're going to get into this season. We'll have a bunch of it for you next week, so make sure to stick around, tune in for that. Like I said at the beginning of the video, like, comment, subscribe. It sounds cliche, but it really helps us out, guys. Other than that, we'll see y'all next time. Have a good one.